Alright, it is a good day to draw because I woke up today. I'm looking for my pen. There we go. Alright, cool. So as I look back on the work I have created for this project, I'm like, man, I can get a lot better. Can and I will. And this is what these art streams are about, just improving every day, a little bit every day. Today I'm working on a new illustration for Omari Starfall, the novel. So far I have 3 done that I've completed, and these illustrations take time. If you want to create stuff like this, it's going to take you some time to get the details and overall image put together, right? And that's just the way it is. That's just what drawing is all about. It takes time to create what you have envisioned in your head. And so in this live stream, I'll be working on this drawing here of the next scene in the book. It's going to take me some time to complete this. Obviously, I don't have it rendered or ready to render like I've already done with the other pieces. And so it's just all about consistent practice, right? This is a piece I did back in June, and looking back on it now, it's not as interesting as I would have liked it to be, and I probably could have rendered it a little bit better. But the point of this project is just to consistently be getting our work finished and working on it, getting better with each drawing I do. So for this piece specifically, I want to explain the process and what I'm thinking about as I create these images. For this piece here, started with a sketch in my sketchbook because it feels a lot more natural for me to draw in my sketchbook and create thumbnails this way. And so when I am coming up with these illustrations, I always start with a thumbnail sketch. Each one of these started with a thumbnail sketch. First 2 I did in my sketchbook, these 2, and this 3rd one I did in my in Clip Studio, and it came out fine. But definitely want to incorporate my sketchbook for digital drawing and just make sure that I'm creating work that is starting off with like traditional. It just helps me make this digital drawing experience feel a little bit better. And so even though the majority of this piece will be done digitally, it helps that I started with this being a traditional drawing. And so once I took an image of it with my phone, imported it into Clip Studio, and now I have this ready to go and to draw over, which is fun, exciting. I also created a perspective grid to help me understand the perspective of the scene. And you can tell how flat the image was in the thumbnail. I can tell that I was trying to make sure that there was still atmospheric perspective in the scene, as well as that linear perspective, but it helps to plot it out completely in the drawing program. And it's very easy to do that as well in a drawing program, right? And so what I'm going to do next is start refining this sketch. The perspective grid is there to help me understand the depth in the scene rather than using it specifically to like draw like little boxes and stuff. Because specifically in this scene, it's going to be a little bit harder to draw all these houses and stuff in this city. I think this is going to be my most challenging illustration to complete yet because of how grand it is and how big it is. There's definitely going to be a lot of things to render, but like I said, I want to challenge myself. I have created this piece in June this year. This one I created about a month or so ago, and same thing for this one. And then this one's my most recent one. I think I finished this one either last month or this month. But I just want to continue to get better and make sure that I am challenging myself to improve. And so doing stuff like this that is out of my comfort zone, but at the same time, stuff I can actually complete in a timely manner. I think each one of these drawings took about 8 hours to finish, but I could definitely spend more time on them if I really wanted to just render even more. But as I write the story, I want to make sure I'm completing illustrations for it as I write it, and so sometimes I don't have time to really sit there and just take forever on one specific drawing. I just kind of do my best to render it the best I can, and go from there. So it's definitely going to be my most challenging piece because of how grand it is. But I'm gonna pull my reference so that you can see what I'm referencing as I draw this. Right now I don't really have to worry about it too much, but I have to figure it out. So here's some reference I'm using for this scene. And I gotta do my best to keep it as simple as possible because there's a lot of information in these references that I could get lost in for this specific drawing. So I want to make sure that I don't do that. In this scene here, we are looking down at the city. The first part of the story takes place in the scene, Omari is running or escaping the city, running out of the city. So we kind of get a view of the city to see what it's like, what the environment is like, where he's at right now in this part of the story. So I think I just need to focus on the simpler shapes of this piece right now. And I'm thinking that I don't need these floating rocks here. In the previous scene, I have like these floating islands in the background, and so that's what these are right here in the foreground. But I'm not sure if that helps the composition a lot. I think it might be better. Might be a better composition if I just erase the rocks up here. And that would be good to see the landscape even more. And I created a new layer. I copied and pasted this sketch layer so that I can see what it looks like with and without it. And whichever one looks better, I will keep. But I'm starting to like this one already because we get to see the landscape. But it does kind of feel empty though at the same time, but we'll see. What's helping me with this piece as well is the atmospheric perspective. We have trees in the foreground over here next to this house that I'm going to draw, and we obviously know the size of trees. We can relate to that. So having these gigantic trees in the background will make them seem really big compared to the ones in the foreground. So I like that element. These trees have a role in this story, what they're for and why they're there. These weird looking trees. But yeah, usually this kind of a drawing will take me a good 8 hours to do. So this is just hour number, I don't know, 3, 2, 3, I don't know. I think I want some mountains back here somewhere too. I'm just referring to my good old perspective grid. The settings is a more fantasy medieval setting, so I want to maybe draw some fantastical looking mountains back here. Maybe something like this. I don't know about that shape, but I definitely want to draw some kind of mountainous terrain back here that's really big and gigantic. I also want room for these trees back here too, so. Trying to see what it would look like if I curved them, but it doesn't really look right to me. I think the mountains are a little bit too big now. They shouldn't go too far above the eye level or the horizon line. And then I know I want some foresty areas back here. And basically, because I'm gonna end up just painting these, I just have to indicate the shape rather than try and draw the kind of individual shapes for trees and stuff. I can just indicate shapes. Like if I just use my reference here on the side, we just see shapes of trees. We don't see the individual trees necessarily. We just see groups of trees. So that's what I want to do. Closer we get though, I can probably start doing something like this. Cool. I just want to get this background good enough to where I can start painting it. Hardest part is going to be the foreground and the midground where this giant castle structure is, and all the city structures and the buildings and stuff down here. I'm starting not to like I like how the rocks up here frame composition. Maybe I can include more maybe. think I just need to put them somewhere else. Maybe down here somewhere. So that we can still see the floating islands from this piece. It's just like a different angle. Just gotta figure out how to incorporate it. Because I basically want the composition to go like this. Something like that is what I'm thinking. And so that's why I had the initial floating islands way up here. You can go from here, down here, then end up over here where this explosion is going to be at. So I forgot to erase. There we go. Probably can put more floating islands in here somewhere. To have that kind of S kind of composition. I do like this. I don't like this, but can't see as much of the city as I want to, like this. So yeah, it's a little bit better actually. Not to make them as big as I was making it. I basically just want to get some like clear distinction from foreground, midground, and background. Define each area really clearly. Hmm. There's definitely going to be some more trees over here on these floating islands. I had some reference of like, this isn't one of these pictures, but basically, yeah, this one. I think this is a drawing, but I want to use like this reference specifically for the farmland and kind of the layout of the city as well. But I like the shapes that I can use over here in the reference. So I kind of want to implement that in the landscape back here somehow, some way. Hmm. I'm liking these shapes. I want to implement more of that with this farmland, agricultural area of this city. Looks kind of cool. I think the hardest thing for me to move past though is trying to get everything perfect, especially with a shot like this or a view from this. I know I won't be able to get every little detail perfect how I want it to be, but some of this stuff I'm just gonna have to leave it how it is and move on, because I definitely want to move on to the next illustration. I imagine if this is some type of road right here leading out of the city, maybe we can a few different roads going in and out of the city. Something like that. I don't even know if you would see that from that far away though. Oh no, you would. As long as the road is big enough, like in this shot here. It looks like you would. Yeah, I think that's fine. But we're so far away, I don't think we'll see the sides of the buildings really. We'll just see the rooftops of these buildings. So that's why I specifically wanted a building in the foreground up here on this floating island to be a way to compare the scale of everything. And this building in the foreground makes all the buildings that I will draw down here to make them feel like really small. And this is going to be the most challenging part because I will probably try and overcomplicate this, but I probably only need to draw like super simple little squares and triangles like this, because I can't really get that much detail in that area. I think most of the detail will be in the foreground, and that's pretty much it. After that, I just gotta keep things simple. Let's see. Maybe I put more of a forest here, maybe. Something like that. Mm -mm 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 -mm. In the previous scene, there's like these chains on these islands. So I want to figure out how to implement that as well. Like these chains that kind of hold these islands, keep them from flying too far away or something like that. Just something fun to draw. So maybe I can implement that somewhere. Maybe on this one. I can draw some chains. But maybe not. I feel like that would get in the way. Definitely have options. If I did one right here, what would that look like? Maybe though, we'll see. I'll draw a few of them. What that would look like. Let's see. Yeah, that might actually be cool, actually. I have a couple of these. I'll leave it for now. Let me get back to drawing these the background. I'm gonna draw another tree way back here in the distance. It's gonna be barely visible to account for the atmospheric perspective. Yo, what up? Thank you. Uze lol. Thank you. That's a hard name to pronounce. Yeah, this is gonna be fun though to start rendering and stuff. But I gotta make sure that the planning stage is right, you know? Yeah, because I think this is gonna be good. I'm starting to like the composition and where it's headed. Other than that, in the background, I could probably just include more of the floating islands and stuff, the rock formations from this previous one, especially like way back here in the way back in the background. Then be some big ones, some small ones. Just make some scribbles. Doesn't need to be too organized. Just want them in kind of random spots. One reason why I like drawing these is because it's just like a kind of a theme in like fantasy, medieval fantasy kind of media is like these floating islands and stuff that they would have. So I kind of want to implement that in my own story as well. I don't need to draw too many of these because most of them I will draw and paint in once I get to the painting stage. So for now, that's fine. Yeah, and that works fine too for these buildings. In the background here, we have these simple shapes for the rooftops of homes and stuff. And that's basically all I need to do. I don't need to go into too much detail. I can probably just draw like a cluster of shapes like this and copy and paste it all over the place. Do that like 5 times. That's like the beauty of drawing digitally. I have all these tools at my disposal. Yeah, I'm just gonna draw some like random squares and rectangles and triangles, and then move back and see what it looks like. So yeah, I have that. If I copy and paste it, yeah, that's basically the city right there. And then just kind of move it around, maybe transform it a little bit, warp it a little bit, and then do that like 10 times. This is like the boring stage of a drawing. It's the planning stage and the sketching stage. It's not that exciting, but I got to figure this out so that once I do get to the rendering and coloring stage, it is actually fun to start to finish. Otherwise, I would not get this done. So just gotta plan this out, make sure everything's good to go. Because when I look at my reference, you don't see any of the details. So I want to make sure I convey that in this drawing as well. Just basically random shapes that I need to draw. Wait, what? Oh, never mind. Yep, just copy and paste this 1,000 times. And turn it around. Actually, let's do something like this. Copy and paste 1,000,000 times. Keep doing that. All right, and I have a perspective grid, but I don't really need to keep that in mind because of the buildings, how small they are. At this point, the perspective grid doesn't matter. Maybe for this house in the foreground, but not for these ones down here. Copy and paste, copy and paste. Something like that. Nice. Starting to look like a city now, which is awesome. Doing this on paper would take forever, for real. That'd be a cool challenge, but drawing a scene like this would take me forever on paper. Mm-hmm. It's crazy how you can create an illusion of detail just by like having a bunch of scribbles on the page. It's kind of funny. Just kind of like trick your eye into seeing detail that's not really there. Pretty cool. Because it feels like this image here, my eye can't necessarily make out each and every building that's in the scene, but I know that there's a lot. So kind of the same effect as going on in this drawing right now, which is really cool. All right. Nice. That was a lot more simple than I thought it was going to be. That's why you just got to use the tools that are available to you, you know? The good old copy and paste button. Yes, sir. Cool. That was like the main thing I was worried about. Trying to figure out how to draw the city. And I think I did a pretty good job so far. Now it's got to erase all the overlapping elements. And so now that I have that, I can go ahead and use I'll basically use that sketch layer that I drew all these buildings as my final rendering probably. I'll probably copy and paste that and color that sketch and use or in the coloring process. So I'm not wasting time trying to redraw everything and do a line art over it. I will leave it exactly how it is and just like color it with that. So at this point, I don't think I need the initial thumbnail sketch anymore. Yeah, no, everything is ready to go. Looking good. All right. I just made the layer blue so I can see what I'm erasing easier. All right. Cool. Yeah, that was the main thing I was really worried about. So now that that is done, I will probably start adding some color to it. I don't know, maybe. Yeah, this is dope. I like it. I like it so far. I think what else I can add. Actually, before I start adding color, I actually want to figure out how to draw this building in the foreground. What I'm doing there, and this castle structure. It's probably gonna have very tiny windows and stuff. Same thing, I'll just copy and paste all of that. Merge it down and then copy and paste it again. Nice. I'm gonna do that 1,000 times. I think I said it earlier, but I don't need to actually draw the detail. I just need to make the illusion of detail. Make it seem like there's a lot of detail by creating this kind of depth with these basically almost like random lines. But yeah, that works perfectly. That's perfect. All right. That looks a little weird though, actually, now that I'm looking at it. I think it's because it's kind of flat. It doesn't really like go around the form of the object, this building. And this is where my perspective comes in. I'm gonna turn this back on, perspective grid, and figure out how to curve these lines around the form of this structure. Yeah, something like that. Now I just draw more in. I need to redraw or just copy and paste a new row right here. That makes it look like it goes around the form a little bit better. That side just looks a little bit too flat for me. So after I copy and paste this row, we'll do that next one. All right. Keep on copying and pasting. Create the illusion of detail. And bring it all the way down. Yeah, something like that. Looks all right. And maybe this castle can be more of an octagon shape instead of a circle. That could be interesting because it kind of follows that form what the windows do. That'd be cool. I didn't think of that. And that's why I got to do the planning stage, right? Now I have this more octagon shape. Cool. All right. And then after that, I'm going to go back up here to the foreground and add some detail. My mic is muted the whole time. It's funny. Basically, I was just saying I was gonna add some people down here. That way we can get a better sense of the scale of the image. We have the house here and then the people that are helping us understand how large this place is, how big the city is, how big this tower is, just based off these two elements, the home and these people in the foreground. We can kind of understand what's going on and how big everything is and what the scale is of everything. Just based off the scale of the figures in the foreground and the house in the foreground. Drawing is really cool. I love drawing. It's crazy how you can create a three-dimensional space inside of like a 2D plane, you know, and use that to your advantage to tell stories and stuff. It's really cool. What am I doing now? I want to get to the house. I want to figure out the house here and what's going on. I'm learning to keep architectural drawings really simple as well. Similar to this style of drawing. There's just a roof, some doorways. And so I kind of want to implement that into my own drawing. All right. Oh yeah, perspective grid would probably help here as well. But what's interesting about this island though is it's kind of on its own perspective grid because it doesn't align with the perspective grid of the midground and background. This is kind of on its own because of how high up it is and how close it is to the camera, that it has its own perspective to it. And that can kind of be tricky to figure out. Maybe not. Maybe I can just align it with the perspective grid that already exists. Maybe. I'm going to copy and paste this layer one more time. What I like about copying my layer each time I make a major adjustment is that I can see where I started from. I started from here about 50 minutes ago. This is where my initial sketch was at, and my previous iteration and sketches were at, and then I add more detail to the background. Keep working on it. I got a little bit more detail in the foreground now. At this point, same thing, a little bit more detail. And then after that point, I get to this sketch, and this is where I add like the city and other details and stuff. So it's coming along good, going great. I'm excited to see where this piece goes. It's gonna be fun. But before I end the stream, I want to figure out this house. I'm not going any of the details, but I want to make sure that I get the basic foundation of it correct so that I can add the details later. And that's gonna be fun. What am I doing? Gotta get this house. Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure my layers were good. Okay, so if I have a house and I'm going to use a perspective grid, let's see. My reference. I'm looking down at it, so this shape is correct. If I did that, it would be something like this, I think. I'll follow the perspective grid. I don't know if I like that though. I think that makes sense. Yeah, it doesn't make sense for this angle. Or it makes sense in the perspective, but because of how I drew the floating island in the foreground. It actually doesn't make sense because the foreground is basically on its own perspective. Yeah, it's using its own perspective grid. It's separate from the foreground or the midground and background. So basically, all of this is, well, all of this in the foreground is on its own perspective, and then everything up here is on this 2-point perspective grid. And so let's see. I think the perspective grid for this house, like the horizon line for this house, is probably something like this. Starts right here, ends right there. So it's going something like that, probably. That's my guess, my educated guess. I don't need to get this perfect though, but that's kind of my thought process for this. We are looking down at it, so it makes sense to have a horizon line that's lower on the canvas, so that we're looking down at the subject matter. Okay. So if I redraw that, see what this looks like. I think that might be a little bit better too. I just draw a basic box shape. There's a tower back here, and then a connected building to it. Something like that. But yeah, look at that. That's awesome. And so sometimes in a drawing, you might have 2 different perspectives in a drawing, and that's okay. I noticed that when I studied how to draw backgrounds and landscapes, sometimes an image or buildings in an image will converge to different vanishing points, and that's because there are 2 separate horizon lines or eye levels for certain buildings. And so in this case, the foreground building has its own perspective grid, and then the rest of the image, the midground and background, has its own vanishing points and stuff. And so nice. That small change made this feel 10 times better. I went from this, where the building is kind of looks a little bit off, not in perspective. I just made a simple but easy perspective grid where the horizon line is lower on the canvas, so that we see the foreground from a bird's eye view. And then I just sketched it accordingly to that perspective grid, and now we have that. So far so good. That was about an hour of work on this drawing, and I made some good progress on it. It's gonna take me a little bit longer to get it to a point where I can get it to this kind of a level of rendering, but so far I'm on illustration number 4 for Omari Starfall, and it's going well. So we moved from the inside of this building. It's like giant tower you see in this current illustration. Omari is moving throughout the building, encountering different characters. And then we're outside. We have a brief moment of rest and reprieve. And now, I think I used that word correctly. Reprieve. And now we're outside and looking at the scene and what's happening in the story from the outside world and their viewpoint. And so it's going to be fun to draw and color and render. It is going to take me a little bit longer. I said it earlier, but basically each one of these takes me about 8 hours, 9 hours to finish and render. And so I'm excited to finish this up, but thank you all for joining me in this live stream, hanging out with me, watching me draw. Hopefully you learned something during this process of me sketching all this, and it's gonna be fun to render this and color it. But yeah, I'm excited. So peace, have a good one.